Propulsion is the energy required to move a runner forward. This is the one source of energy expenditure that a runner wants to maximize. The more energy available for propulsion, the faster an athlete will run. Vertical displacement refers to the energy a runner expends to move his body upward during each stride cycle. Obviously, moving up and down does not increase running speed. Vertical displacement is wasted energy that runners need to minimize in order to run efficiently. One reason why a bicycle is such an efficient machine is that wheels provide a movement with zero vertical displacement. The rider's center of mass travels exactly parallel to the road. Runners should seek to duplicate this as much as possible. The energy cost of support is the energy required to hold a runner up. The energy cost of support follows the energy cost of vertical displacement closely. What goes up must come down. The more a runner raises his center of mass during a stride cycle, the harder he will hit the ground, and the more energy required to catch the body's weight at foot strike. The energy cost of acceleration is the power required to accelerate the body back to running speed after momentum is lost during each stride cycle. Most runners slow down at foot strike, braking, and then must create forceful muscular contractions to speed back up. Efficient runners carry momentum from each stride cycle to the next, requiring little energy for acceleration. As this graphic shows, running speed fluctuates throughout each stride cycle. Every runner literally slows down and speeds back up with every step. Average running speed, as shown by this line, can be increased two ways. The first is to create more propulsion to accelerate to a higher speed. Obviously, this requires more power and increases energy expenditure. The other is to slow down, or brake, less on each foot strike. This increases average running speed without increasing energy expenditure. Minimizing the energy cost of acceleration is a key to running more efficiently. The energy cost of balance is the energy required to keep a runner's mass over his support, the foot and leg. Efficient techniques keep a runner's body positioned optimally relative to his foot strike. Well-balanced runners require less energy to run fast. Runners spend a certain amount of energy just moving the arms and legs. Efficient runners accomplish this in ways that minimize energy expenditure. The energy represented in numbers 2 through 6 are sources of wasted energy. Efficient techniques minimize each of these, allowing the runner to spend more energy on propulsion and therefore run faster. With a thorough understanding of where runners expend energy, we can now look at ways to minimize wasted energy. The first of those is finding a balance between stride length and stride frequency. If you only learn one thing from this video, let it be this. Efficient runners take relatively short, quick strides at any running speed. Most runners overstride, taking steps that are too long and too slow for the speed they are running, especially at easy aerobic paces. The most important reason for this is vertical displacement. If I were to throw a baseball to you while you stood only 10 feet away, I would throw it on a relatively straight line without having to arc it up in the air. If I were to throw it to you while you stood 50 yards away, I would need to arc it high in the air to get it to you before it hit the ground. In the same way, a runner who wants to cover a lot of ground with every stride needs to propel himself significantly upward as well as forward. As we discussed earlier, this wastes energy going up, the energy cost of vertical displacement, and going down, the energy cost of support. If your quadriceps, the muscles in the front thigh, fatigue after long runs at a leisurely pace, you probably overstride. Long strides also increase impact stress and injury risk. What goes up must come down. Over time, this will cause a greater number and more severe injuries. Efficient runners use extremely high turnover and relatively short strides when running at any pace. This requires less vertical displacement, minimizing the energy cost of both vertical displacement and support. It also requires less forceful contractions for horizontal propulsion by breaking the workload up into more manageable units. When you stretch out a rubber band and then let it go, what happens? It snaps back forcefully. Many human tissues operate the same way. Efficient runners store energy from one stride at foot strike and release it at push-off as propulsion for the next stride, almost as if they had springs in their shoes. While you may not have springs in your shoes, you do have springs in your calves and in your feet. The calf muscles, the Achilles tendon, and the plantar fascia in the arch of the foot are very elastic. Efficient runners tap this as a source of energy as well as shock absorption, using a reaction called elastic recoil. Elastic recoil, if utilized properly, provides runner with free speed. This source of propulsion does not require energy expenditure, and it does not fatigue. The elastic components of your tissues never run out of fuel, never build up lactic acid, and never dehydrate. Unlike a rubber band, human tissue does not snap back as forcefully if the stretch is held. Watch an efficient runner, and you'll see that their feet are on the ground for just a split second. Efficient runners use a stride rate of approximately 180 to 182 foot strikes per minute, regardless of running speed. The energy stored in the elastic tissues is released as propulsion before it has had time to dissipate. Most runners think since taller runners have longer legs, they should have proportionally longer strides than shorter runners, and therefore requires fewer strides per minute. While this makes sense from a physics perspective, it does not from a physiological perspective. Taller runners need to use the same stride length and turnover as shorter runners. This is necessary to keep contact time between the feet and ground short in order to maximize elastic recoil. The key to learning to run with increased turnover is shortening your stride. Many athletes increase their turnover by 20% or more without shortening stride length. They find they can run fast, but they have no endurance. While they feel smooth and efficient, they start breathing very hard, heart rate goes through the roof, and they cannot sustain it. The Evolution running techniques will enable you to run fast without nearly as forceful a push-off. I recommend finding what your natural turnover is before you make any changes to your stride, and gradually increasing that towards 180. We have our runners use a metronome to monitor turnover. This is a small electronic device that will beep at whatever rate you set it to. Metronomes can be purchased at most music stores for about $35. This allows you to monitor your turnover objectively, eventually making 180 foot strikes per minute your natural rhythm. As you work on increasing turnover, keep the movements quick and light. Make sure that your push-off is less powerful than normal. Remember that if you increase turnover by 20%, you will run faster even with a stride length that is 15% shorter than normal. The next aspect of running technique we're going to cover is foot strike placement, where your foot hits the ground in relation to your body. This is a particularly critical part of running technique because if you don't get this piece right, several other pieces become impossible. Almost every runner lands with a foot out in front of the body. This is the single biggest problem with most runners' technique. From the position this runner's in, he cannot possibly create propulsion. In this position, the runner cannot effectively pull himself forward, but must wait until he coasts forward to this position, until his body is over his foot. This coast time causes a number of problems. First, notice that the runner's center of mass, represented by the square at hip level, travels upward on an arc around the position of the foot strike and not horizontally, so the energy cost of vertical displacement will be considerable. As discussed earlier, this also increases the energy cost of support, requiring greater energy expenditure upon landing. This foot strike placement also causes significant braking, slowing running speed at foot strike and requiring significant energy to re-accelerate on every stride. The energy from the runner's last stride carries his body forward from the position here to the position here. Energy from momentum is lost in the process. and additional energy must be expended to re-accelerate the runner back up to speed. An out-in-front foot strike placement also reduces energy return from elastic recoil. Contact time between the feet and ground needs to be minimized to make the best use of elastic recoil. The coast time, required for the runner's body to move up and over his foot placement, allows plenty of time for the energy stored at foot strike to dissipate before it can be released at push-off. The energy cost of balance is also increased with this foot strike position. Try balancing yourself on one foot with that foot 6 inches in front of your body. Pretty tough, huh? This foot strike placement also dramatically increases impact stress and injury risk. When the foot hits the ground, a runner's center of mass is moving diagonally forward and down. An out-in-front foot strike position puts the leg almost in a direct line with the body's motion so that it will absorb the greatest amount of impact stress. Efficient runners land with a foot almost directly beneath their center of mass, or their hips. This allows a quicker and more horizontal push-off, minimizing the energy cost of vertical displacement and support, and maximizing the energy return from elastic recoil. With a foot directly beneath the runner, momentum is carried through to the next stride efficiently, minimizing braking and the energy cost of acceleration. Landing with the foot and leg exactly in the push-off position minimizes contact time between the feet and the ground, allowing maximal return of propulsion from elastic recoil. Foot strike and push-off become a single moment instead of a landing, glide, and then a push-off. A runner with this foot strike placement requires very little energy for balance. Finally, landing with a foot strike directly beneath the body maximizes the angle of deflection. Impact becomes a glancing blow, minimizing stress to the tissues and effectively carrying momentum forward without braking. The most effective way to learn optimal foot strike placement is a drill called running in place. Without forward momentum from the previous stride available to waste, a runner has to keep his foot strike directly beneath his center of mass. Alternately shift your weight from one foot to the other, simulating running but without moving forward. Lift one leg up directly beneath the hips, just a few inches at first, while bouncing on the other. Establish a quick rhythm. As you lift the legs in this drill, the knee moves slightly forward and the heel moves slightly backward. Lift the leg until the lower leg is parallel to the ground, with the knee as far in front of the body as the heel is behind it. Notice that during this drill, your feet always hit the ground directly underneath your hips. Try to do this drill with a foot strike that is 6 inches in front of your hips. If you can do it at all, significant energy will be wasted on balance and support, energy that should be used for propulsion. Most people cannot do it at all. Some can, but actually move backward.